Afternoon, everybody. It's a coolish afternoon and it's going to get dark pretty soon, so I'm going to speak now, not too loud. I had a bit of a late night and I did a walking tour just now, so I can't speak too loud, but we can get to substance and you can ask questions and see how we go. Fire away.
What are your campaign promises?
Well, it's a bit early for that, but the basic framework that I'm trying to work out, I'll repeat again, I am going to stand for Mayor of London. These are very peculiar times, very specific circumstances. Throughout my political life, I have always been an advocate that you should not stand against the Labour Party. And I would stand by that concept, but for the fact that we now have the biggest economic and social crisis in living memory, apart from the Second World War. And the consequence of that is that we need urgent action to change what's happening in this country and around the world. And so if I can be a little bit of a voice in London to try and act as a lever to change the balance of power in society on all the questions that we are now confronted with: economic, social, health, housing, and cultural questions. You know, the closure of all the cultural institutions, seize control of the buildings that are empty, that have been made empty by the closure by companies sending people home, Uberizing the workers. Seize those buildings, turn them into housing for the people, cultural centres for the people, and centres where self-employed people and cooperatives can establish a base to try and maintain the culture, community and collective labour production of society. So that's one angle. The housing and what's to be done with the empty buildings. That's one angle that I will focus on as a major issue. One thing I might do is like in the plague, they used to mark the houses that were infected. I think we need to mark the houses and buildings that are empty, because they are at the core of this social crisis we are living in today. And you only have to look across here to see the amount of tents parked up in Park Lane, supposedly in the middle of a pandemic. And because so many politicians have fallen for the nonsense being propagated by the government and its so-called scientists, that there's some sort of second wave happening now, and they seem to be arguing, like Macron did yesterday, that these measures will have to be in place until next summer when a vaccine comes. I mean, there are just so many lies being propagated now that somehow we have to get a message out to the people to give them a sense of hope and to allow them to engage in the arguments on the real issues confronting humanity today and on the facts about COVID-19 and SARS-CoV-2, the virus. And there's been so many lies about this, so many distortions, so many falsifications, that somebody has to stand up and try to get that message across about what the truth is about what's happening in society. And the truth is about COVID-19 and SARS-CoV-2. I'll start with that. There is no pandemic. There is none. There is no. The number of deaths they took, now they're escalating the number of deaths every day. A friend told me yesterday, his neighbour, 95 years of age, had a heart attack yesterday. They called the ambulance. The ambulance arrived. They come to the 95-year-old and they say to him, if we take you to hospital now, you will be placed in a COVID ward. A 95-year-old with a heart attack. Why will they be placed in a COVID ward? Because they haven't had a COVID test. And if they go in a hospital, they require a COVID test. It takes 24 hours to get the results. Therefore, whether this person is okay or not, I don't know. But if that's the way they're treating the people in this country now, lying to them, you know, if this guy was to go into hospital now, he's had a heart attack, he's 95 years of age, if he tests positive for this stupid test that does not work, then they will call him a COVID death. Another guy I know from Syria, lives up the road here, his uncle had kidney failure. He died in hospital, but they tested him just before he died and they found SARS-CoV-2 molecules in his body, doing nothing to him. Then he died. Then they said he died of, or better said, with COVID, another number that the government can announce. When the people were dying actually from the pandemic in March and April and a little bit in May, the government did everything wrong and nothing right. Sent the people to the care homes, kicking them out of hospital. Stopped the operations for normal operations. Treated people with inadequate medicine. Refused to propose, even until today. They've refused to say people should take vitamin D. For God's sake, vitamin D, 4 tablets a day, and you'll protect your immune system against the virus. And yet, the government refuses to promote this, and instead they tell you they've got world-beating vaccines that they're buying. mRNA vaccines that change your genes of your body and the future generations potentially. And that in the name of science. These people have thrown society into the dark ages as far as science is concerned. They got people all around London, around the world, living in fear as they walk down the streets, fearing their children, fearing their grandchildren, in case they bring a virus and kill them. And yet they're lying to you, because the epidemic began in February and ended in May in Britain. Began in February in Germany, Austria, Italy, Spain and France, and ended in May. There is no second wave of the pandemic. There is no second wave. All they are doing is falsifying the data. Anyone dies, they got a test, and they're doing so many. Everyone who goes to hospital is tested.
That's right. Well, why are they doing this? Why are they doing this course? It's an agenda.
Because the WHO has come under the control of pharmaceutical companies who've gained an extraordinary influence inside the voting in the WHO. And the WHO earlier this year changed all its formal procedures in the definition of what is a case. When you look at the news, when you listen to the radio, when you turn on the television, they confuse
That's right.
a molecule of a virus called SARS-CoV-2, which does nothing to the overwhelming majority of people who have it in their body.
Correct.
Many of you have this molecule in your body. They found it in the sea. They found it in mink farms. They found it on seafood products. It is not deadly as it is in a molecule. But if you have a high viral load, which you catch from someone who is ill with a disease which can be provoked by a high viral load of SARS-CoV-2. In other words, if I get the virus from somebody in high dosage, after 10 minutes sitting with them, at close contact, so in other words, probably your partner, or probably someone you're sitting and chatting with intimately. A friend of mine did catch it recently, from her boyfriend, because they were kissing. Right? Now, she's absolutely fine. A few days later, all over. Donald Trump, for God's sake, the guy's obese. 4 years of age? The overwhelming majority of over 75-year-olds, 90% of over 75-year-olds have no problem. I read a report from the Chinese government this morning. from their July analysis of the entire epidemic in China. It ended in China in March. And they said, by the end of the epidemic in China, 89% of all sick patients with COVID-19, COVID-19 is an illness, SARS-CoV-2 a virus. But in the news they say cases of COVID when they're testing for the virus. They don't distinguish the virus from the disease. That is why the WHO is responsible for this chaos, because they insisted that a COVID case is anyone who tests positive for the virus in their body, which means nothing. 80% and more of those who tested positive since May or since June in Britain until today have no symptoms at all. They are not suffering from COVID. They have a molecule or two of a virus that passed them somewhere. They pick their nose after touching something that has the virus on it. It does nothing to you. There are 100 million times more viruses on planet Earth than there are stars in the universe. We have thousands of viruses in our body. By the way, I was going to say, in China, 89% at the end of the epidemic, 89% of patients who suffered severe COVID-19 recovered by being given chloroquine. They started that in China. By giving Chinese traditional medicine, I don't know whether that's good or not, and by some simple treatments. And then, if 89% recovered, the Chinese government, I read the report today from the State Council of China, published in June this year, and it said 89% recovery rate at the end, which is higher recovery than normal viral pneumonia. So it is true, it is less dangerous now we know how to treat it, than normal viral pneumonia. And that was in China, where the death rate was reasonably high.
Can I ask something? When they announce the statistics every day, they say the number of infected and the number of deaths. All one has to do is to divide the number of infected from the number of deaths, and you get a figure from about 0.02 or 0.03. Now, if flu kills 0.04, this is less deadly than
I
flu.
looked into this question, and you know, every year, the figures that you say, the seasonal flu kills a lot of people. Some years worse, some years less.
0.4.
You look back every year. I did a search yesterday, quickly. Crisis. They're going crisis in the NHS. No beds. Manchester's got no beds. ICU units full. Oh my God! Lockdown! Right? They want to lock down London. Now you can't visit a friend. You can't visit your grandmother. What sort of madness is this? The students are locked up. And yet, based on what? They say, oh, it's worse than seasonal flu. Well, how many people are tested for seasonal flu every year? If you got flu, you go home, you eat chicken soup, and a few days later you're okay. You take some vitamins, you're okay. But of course, if you're 80 years of age and you've got lung cancer and you get a viral infection or you get flu, the chance of you dying are high. The same chance of dying as dying of COVID-19. Exactly the same chance, or less in the case of COVID-19. Now we know this. At the beginning we didn't. At the beginning it was justified to be worried, particularly because of scenes in China and in Bergamo in Italy. But now we know so much more. We know the total amount of people who are estimated to be infected. The WHO itself said 2 weeks ago at a session of the WHO General Council, I believe it's called, that 10% of the world have been infected. Even if you accepted their lying statistics that 1 million people died, it would be less than seasonal flu. But seasonal flu is not measured. They don't measure how many people actually get seasonal flu and how many die. What they measure is those people who go to hospital and catch seasonal flu in addition to their existing illness, and then die as that spikes them over the edge. That's what they measure. And on that count, you get something like 30-40% of people who have got serious illnesses who then get seasonal flu in hospital and die. And so the figures are not comparable. We test now hundreds of thousands of people a day. Everyone going into hospital is tested. Why are they going to hospital? Because they're ill, not with COVID-19. They're ill with something else. Only a few of them, a tiny minority of those going to hospital now, who they call in hospital with COVID-19, only a tiny proportion of them have got COVID-19. What they have, and that's why they can use the terms, COVID-19 is an illness, SARS-CoV-2 is a virus. They are not the same thing. If you have SARS-CoV-2 in your body, most people who have it in their body are not ill. 80% asymptomatic. Another 15% mild illness, like a flu. Another 5% serious illness.
During the first wave, they used the term coronavirus all the time. They don't use it now. They say because coronavirus.
Now they always, you see, they got everyone used to the idea that using the word COVID-19 is correct, or COVID cases. They are not COVID cases, and I tell you how you find out. Go to the WHO website, or go into Google, look up WHO definition of COVID-19 and SARS-CoV-2. And there they have, at the beginning of the pandemic, in fact even before, they said this is the definition. SARS-CoV-2 is a virus. That virus can lead to a disease that we call COVID-19. The two things are different, yet they confuse everybody by pretending they're the same. I think they even think it's the same themselves. I think they've lost their bloody minds, because the only people who tell them are these stupid guys they call scientists. Paid agents of the ruling class.
Right.
Paid agents of big business. Patrick Vallance has £700,000 worth of shares in the vaccine-making company that the British government is buying the bloody drugs from. The vaccine is a dangerous vaccine. I am not against vaccines, but this vaccine is treating mankind like a bloody experiment, like guinea pigs.
Yep.
And they're trying to rush it out, saying to you, you need the vaccine, you need the vaccine, otherwise we'll be living in misery forever. Mankind will never escape from tutelage to the virus unless you take the mRNA vaccine. The only time they've used this type of vaccine was in Sweden. Here you have the connection. Was in Sweden for swine flu. They rushed it out. They told the world, swine. You know who was behind it? A certain Neil Ferguson from Imperial College. Remember the name? Neil Ferguson, who predicted millions of deaths with swine flu, millions of deaths with bird flu, millions of deaths with mad cow disease, millions of deaths with SARS-CoV-2, coronavirus, COVID-19 the disease. Every time Neil Ferguson made a prediction, he was wrong. Not by a little bit, but way out by a factor of 200 or 300 in most of, or more than that. And yet, Neil Ferguson managed to persuade the Swedes, Tegnell and his forerunner, Giske. They were persuaded to buy mRNA vaccines, which they injected into the children in Sweden. And 2,000 of them came down with narcolepsy. The sudden, and you're awake and you fall asleep, drop on the floor. There's one guy at Speaker's Corner who speaks, he's got narcolepsy like that. So that's what they did. And that's why Sweden chose a different path this time. They'd heard that shit before. They fell for it before. And this time they said, enough is enough. We will not do that. By the way, I was in Sweden from Monday to Thursday this week. And I was so happy to be there. I walked around the streets, no masks.
Heiko, can I interject here?
Let me just quickly describe and then come in. You go to the bar, no masks. You walk in the shop, no masks. You walk on the streets, no masks. People are behaving still like human beings. It's like going back in time, you know, Doctor Who gets in the TARDIS and lands up in Sweden, and you walk down the street and it's as if nothing had happened. Now I tell you this, not only is that the case in Sweden, by the way, but it's also the case in Delhi. It's also the case in Mumbai. It's also the case in Mexico City. Anywhere where the poor people have to survive, they don't adhere to this bullshit. Distancing!
It's unsocial distance.
Wash your hands! Sanitize!
Yeah.
Don't visit friends!
Can I make a point?
Get a test! They do not do that there! I'll tell you just one more second. And therefore it's a lie that these measures are stopping the spread of the virus. It's a complete and absolute lie. There is no spread of the virus. There is a spread of testing for molecules of a virus. There is no virus they're detecting. Some cases they're detecting a virus, but in most cases they're detecting broken parts of a virus. Professor Sukhari Bhakti, who I interviewed 2 weeks ago, one of the world's leading experts in immunology, parasitology, microbiology and virology. He headed the centre in Mainz University that dealt with one disease after another. And when I interviewed him, we put the broadcast out on Content Over Everything. Content Over Everything's channel was told this video is banned because it disagrees with the decisions of the World Health Organization. And what he said was this. I'll come back to one second. How does the PCR, how does this swab test work? What it does is it detects a certain quantity, it seeks a certain quantity of virus. So let's say they want 10,000 parts of virus. If you start out drinking, let's say you go to the pub and you drink 100 milliliters of whiskey. And then you test it on the street with a breath test. And the breath test multiplies it 10 times.
Alcohol kills
and produces 1 million parts of the virus.
Yeah.
But if you go with 1 milliliter of whiskey, you should do a breath test and it multiplies it, and you'd only come up with 10,000 parts. And that's what it should do if you multiply it 10 times. But instead of this, may I multiply it 17 times and they get 1 million. And therefore, whether you've drunk 1 milliliter or 100 milliliters, you still count as being drunk. That's what they're doing with the PCR test. They are saying, no matter how small the quantity, no matter whether it's active and can infect you, whether it can make you ill or not, if it's in your body, you're a case. You must isolate. You must be imprisoned. You must be quarantined. And everyone around you must be quarantined. This has nothing to do with science. It has everything to do with the destruction of reason, the destruction of science, the destruction of culture, the destruction of the economy, the destruction of our lives, the destruction of family, the destruction of friendship, the destruction of joy, and most of all, the destruction of sex. And we all laugh, but sex is the reproduction of the species. It's the foundation of our very existence. All humanity is founded on sex. Even the most prudish man on earth had sex. His parents had sex for them to come into existence. And yet we are told now in Britain, now in London, it is illegal for partners who do not live together to have sex. How mad is this world they have dragged us into? That's why I'm standing for Mayor of London, to explain the truth and to overcome the lies.
I'm now of the opinion that this virus is the greatest hoax in scientific history. I'm not a virologist. I have had a flu virus and I thought my time was up. And if they're going to tell a lie, the scientific establishment, they're on a roll. I call it the World Bullshit Health Organization as I speak.
Let's be clear about this. The capitalist system of society is a system based on conspiracy and lies. How can I prove this to you? The Speaker's Corner Cafe, take our local representative of capitalism, the closest we have. There are two girls work there. Nowhere is it published on the internet how much they're paid. Nowhere is it published on the internet how much the cafe makes. Nowhere is it published on the internet how much they pay in rent or rates. Nowhere is it published on the internet how much profits are made. Instead of this, after a year and a half of founding the company, they make a self-declaration to the government website about how much tax they should pay. Every single private limited company in Britain functions that way. And the bigger you are, the more the lies and concealment. Their accounts aren't online. They don't tell you their business transactions. Everything is a company secret. Why is it a company secret? Because if it isn't a company secret, anyone can set up a company doing the same thing. Well, that's a good idea. Now I know how Morgan Stanley works, I'll do the same. Now I know how Barclays Bank works, I'll do the same. Now I know how Speaker's Corner Cafe works, I'll do the same. And therefore capitalism, endemic to its nature, is conspiracy. Now associated with that is legal protection of conspiracy. The law is designed to protect business. Business controls society. And let me just give you a couple of simple examples before I take you. You remember the Iraq War? We were here.
Tony Blair's murdering
Tony Blair said, there are weapons of mass destruction. We must bomb Iraq to save the world. They have weapons that will fire and hit England in 40 minutes. Unless we act now. Stop the world from being destroyed by Saddam Hussein and weapons of mass destruction. They went to war, they mobilised the army, they mobilised America, they mobilised a coalition of the winning.
Hey man, it's policy, man.
They launched Operation Iraqi Freedom.
War criminals.
1 million people died in total as a consequence. 2 million. Any advance on 2? Do I hear 3? 2 million people then. And then afterwards, no weapon of mass destruction was found.
Correct.
If it were a clever conspiracy, they would have planted it.
It would have been a job
But they are
scheme.
stupid conspirators. So even a fool like me, or a fool like you, can stand at Speaker's Corner and say, I'm not a virologist, any of us.
Thank you.
I'm not a virologist, but I know they're talking crap.
Yes.
And that's why they present on a television. Come to the room. 3 of them.
Yeah, it
Mr.
looks
Van,
so good
Claude
on
Van
TV.
Damme. Dr. Claude Van Damme.
Where is Belgium anyway?
What's his name? Wancock. Sorry, Hancock.
My Afrikaans friend.
And
Hello.
Bojo himself storms up to the stage. Maybe we have a graph now. We've got a multicoloured graph today. You've not seen one of them, have you?
Bullshit.
I bet you don't know how to make one of them yourself. Now, we've got a question from the audience. They picked that up from the corner.
Yeah, I voted Labour. Why shouldn't I vote Labour again?
No, the question from the audience, well, we're in lockdown now, and when you come in late, going to do that. Thank you very much, very important question. I'll pass it on to Claude Van Damme. Claude Van Damme comes in and says, well, it's a very important question, remember, very clever question, you see, man. I didn't mean that. Very clever question. Here's a chart, look at that, going up. So they're permanently going to the top, down, up, and away. Don't forget, Boris Johnson on the 3rd of February this year, his first major speech after Brexit, 31st of January, he said, there is one country that will stand up against coronavirus.
Yeah, he's got a church.
I will be, that's right, he said,
He went like this, like a Churchillian pose, and he says, Britain will be that country. And we will emerge. It is one country which puts on its spectacles, jumps into the telephone box, and emerges like a supercharged champion of the world. That's what he actually said. The guy's a maniac.
He's a
But
journalist.
you see what's been exposed is it's not just the
Second-rate
politicians.
one at that.
It's the connection between corporate power, global institutions like the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization,
Contradiction in
which have
terms.
increasingly become influenced and controlled by giant multinational tech companies and pharma companies,
Big pharma.
including Bill Gates with his £100 billion of charitable organisation to save the world by jabbing shit into your arm. Including the pharmaceutical companies who've always been trying to sell their drugs. I mean, for God's sake, when I got to 50 years of age, I went to the doctor. The doctor came in and said, oh, come on, let's test your cholesterol. They test my cholesterol. She goes, oh, your cholesterol level's quite high. She didn't distinguish between good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. She didn't even try to explain that to me.
Has she got big tits?
Your cholesterol is high. What are you, an unwoken man? You don't want to sit in the sin bin, 14 days quarantine.
Yes,
sir. 14 days quarantine for your dirty mind. You've been watching Pornhub too much.
Boring at my age.
That one, I never heard of it. I've never heard of it. Where were we before that?
A female doctor.
Oh, a female doctor. How did you know she was female? She was female.
Did you say?
Now, there you go, see?
Oh,
All
you're getting
monitoring it.
confused now.
And she turned around and said at 50 years of age, she goes, well, the cholesterol is high. You need to take statins. Statins for life. For life. Don't forget, there's a drug company selling to the doctors. Prescribing
Yes, that's
statin.
correct.
Semostatin. I took it once. I took it twice. I took it 3 times. I started getting a bit of a stiff erection every day. Not that it doesn't get stiff every day anyway, but a little bit. And then I suddenly started getting
Broadband.
pins and needles in my
Medical.
feet, pins and needles in my leg, pins and needles right the way up and around my penis, going up to the rest of my body, sometimes reaching my head, pins and needles all over my body. I carried on taking them for a while, then I got hot water, like a feeling like someone's poured hot water down the back of my inside back of my
Spilled your
leg.
kettle, didn't you?
I just pissed myself.
Yes.
Maybe you did.
So I thought maybe these semostatins are not so good. So I stopped taking them. 3 months later, all the symptoms disappear. And then I read on the internet and I discover the British government has made a statistical calculation. If everyone over 50 takes statins, we can reduce
We'll
the
all be
death rate
walking
per
around with
year
hard dogs.
by so many percent. That's the logic of these idiots who replace medicine. Medicine is the treatment of human beings. A doctor's responsibility is to look at a patient and to examine that patient. If any of you have seen the TV program House MD, House MD looks at the problem. It looks like this illness, but let's have a proper look. The man comes from this place. He eats this diet. He's had this history. Perhaps he's not telling me about some things. I'll try this on him. Maybe it's not that. Then he has a conference. Let's examine it again. Is it really that? That's why you say, when a doctor says you've got terminal cancer, 1 week to live, you say, well, I'm going to go and take a second opinion. You take a second opinion, and another doctor says something different. Doctors are like plumbers, or car repairman,
That's right.
or a computer engineer. They study a practical skill. I am a doctor. I am not a medical doctor. I am a higher doctor than a medical doctor. I have a doctorate of philosophy. What does that mean? Doctorate of philosophy, in order to get one, you have to make a unique contribution to human knowledge. Doctors do not do that. Doctors look at you and abide by protocols and rules. They look for a book, what medicine, that book is that picks the medicine that they've already bought in. Because the NHS is lobbied by pharmaceutical companies who, rather than treating people like human beings, individuals who must be examined in their real state as a being, as a living human, not as a number and statistic on a book.
One size fits all.
And that is what's happened. Medicine during this pandemic has been replaced by hocus pocus invented by statistical artificial intelligence idiots working at universities who invented those ideas by trying to manipulate the population in the name of behavioural science.
Well said.
Behavioural science is not science, it's hocus pocus designed to help rich people get richer.
That's right.
That's it. That's it. We need to return to the principle of medicine. A good friend of mine is a medical doctor. He told me 20 years ago, he told me, because I started talking, well, what about homeopathy? What about these other, like, alternative therapies? Why do those people seem so convinced? He said, well, it's very simple. I work in the NHS, he said. We are instructed, this was 20 years ago, less now. We are instructed not to spend more than 10 minutes with a patient.
That's right.
You look at the booking system. You go to the doctors, you're allocated 10 minutes. And if they don't deal with you in 10 minutes, they can't get through the list of people. They'd have to cancel appointments. So they must treat you or look at you for only 10 minutes. You've sat down, said hello, introduce yourself. The doctor has to judge you. The doctor doesn't just listen to what you say. The doctor also looks at you. How do you say it? They're psychologically judging what you're saying. Is it really the problem that person's got? If they say to you, how many units of alcohol do you drink? If you're like me and you drink a few drinks, you lie. You know.
I mean, you didn't do maths at school.
Oh, they say how many units, and it allows you to exclude. Oh, I don't know what unit is. Oh, not many. Couple a week. The rock goes like that. They know you're lying.
They don't.
And by that they can, well, often they do. A good doctor will know how to judge you. And that's how a doctor acts. Now, my friend said, why are people going into homeopathy and so on? Because the homeopathic doctor gets paid by the hour. They'll take £25, £30 an hour. You come and visit them, they'll spend time with you. They'll say, what's the matter with you? Any problems in your personal life? How are you getting on in life? You get out in the sun, have you had a holiday? How's your work? They ask you what you are. You're exactly like that guy. You're exactly like that guy.
On his Facebook.
This is what you do. Anyone remember this? Life of Brian. Penny for a leper? Penny for a leper, mate? Come on, give me for an excellent. That's you. That's you, great. No, I'm messing with you. I'm not in favour of homeopathy. I'm arguing.
They've written a book on
Oh,
what he's talking
come
about.
on.
Professor Nick Holstrom.
Great. But I'm not discussing that. I'm merely saying why it is that people feel better. Nothing. Does anybody want to listen to this guy now? You get the message? But there are a lot of people around in the park. I'm sure you can go over there, start your meeting over there. I'm sure you can. I don't want that help.
We don't want to hear. We don't want to hear. We listen
Nobody
to
wants to
him.
hear it.
We listen to
Nobody
him.
wants to hear it.
Go away.
Nobody wants to hear you.
Go away. We
Go
listen
and
to him.
explain it to others. What is-
Go away.
Why are you so scared of your own ability to speak to people?
I want to talk to you.
I don't want to talk to you.
Oh, that's not nice.
What part of that don't you
That's
understand?
not nice. Come on.
There are other human beings here. You're wasting all their time and mine. None of us want you here.
Anton Duchamp. You're talking about fucking homeopathy. That's the father of it.
Talking about homeopathy.
You did.
I mentioned it
Naturopathy. I've got
in
it here as well at the
passing.
back.
It was one
Do you
word
wanna know?
I said
There's a
in
book.
passing. I wasn't talking about homeopathy. I was mentioning it
Go on, I'll
in
listen to you. I'll
passing.
shut up and listen
Huh?
to you. You're very knowledgeable.
Thank you very much.
I mean,
Now,
it's right.
So if you spend time with someone, you're going to obviously have an effect. If a lot of illnesses are psychosomatic, That's why when they do
Just see-
double-blind tests, one with a real drug, one with a placebo,
That's it.
some of the people with a placebo recover.
Placebo.
Because psychosomatically
That's
they
it.
recover, right?
You're on about
Every single one of you, probably without exception,
Symptoms are not
That's what he's on about.
at some
Huge amount of
time,
medicine,
oh
I've got
come
it.
on,
I've got it. I'm helping you out. Who's looking now? Go on, look, go on. You know you want to. And then I'll leave you. Look. New Germanic medicine, good hard hammer.
Wait.
That's what he's on about.
It's on video.
40,000.
It's on video. The whole world has seen.
Why they'll see me long before you.
You are a speaker's corner parasite.
Oh, that's good. I've been called a lot worse.
You live
I've
off
been
other
called a lot
meetings.
worse. I've
You
been called
live
a
off
lot
my
worse.
meeting like a parasite.
I'm helping you. I'm helping you out.
But
You're
you are,
talking about
but you
stuff
are
you're
a
not
living human
knowledgeable.
being.
I've
You
left
can
you
stand
for
up
3
and speak
weeks.
on your own.
I can spell it right.
Oh, thank you
Believe
very
me,
much.
I stand on
You
my own.
left me for
Believe
3
me, I've
weeks.
never had a
Oh,
problem with
thank
that.
you.
I've left you 3 weeks and I mentioned
Oh,
bioterrain
thank
theory.
you.
and I'll
Thank
help you out
you.
again.
I'm so grateful
No,
to
you
you.
should be, because I'll fucking tear you up. Look, well done.
Swearing at me.
David Notes.
I've been polite to you.
You just called me a fucking parasite.
I called you a parasite. I didn't call you a
I mean,
fucking
polite.
parasite. I called you a speaker's corner
There you
parasite,
go, look.
which is what you are.
Natural doctors. There you
Ow.
look. So go on.
Now I have.
Go on.
I'm about to finish my speech. You have
Well, I've
attempted to
done my
destroy
bit
the
for today.
meeting.
I've seen someone I want to talk to. I'll see you later.
Good, see you
It's called
later.
bioterrain theory, and we're researching
Oh,
next
go
week.
on. Get a move on.
Sorry. Thank you very
I
much.
know there's been no sex for a long time.
That's why I'm so happy.
Thank God. Now, double-blind tests are not only valid for medicine, they're valid for society as well. And it is a double-blind test I'm going to propose now. And this will be part of what I'm proposing as Mayor of London. And I'm proposing it now. I went to the demonstration yesterday, I proposed it on the demonstration. And that is this.
Heiko isn't demonstrating against the
One
virus.
sec, let me just finish what I'm saying. It's not about against the virus, it's against the government policies. Now, what I'm saying is the following. There is a way out of this, and I've got the solution for it. And it's the following. Rather than just do half measure, lockdown here, half lockdown here, rule of 6, rule of 3, can't have sex, can't meet in houses, can't go to shop, close the restaurant, open the restaurant, close the time, eat out to help out. Fuck that! What we need is a real... Hold them apart. Hold them apart. Stay away from him. Stay away from him. What's the matter with you? Stay away from him. Just go back the other way. Go out the park. Go on, bloody idiots. Go out the park. Don't punch each other without masks on.
Now the police have got something to do now. They were looking for something to do.
Yeah, the problem is, you know, you lock people up for months on end, they're frustrated, they're wound up.
Yeah.
They start fighting over nothing. You know? The usual minor scuffles. They're not serious fights. Now, the solution is this. Why was it important that Sweden did not lock down? Why was it important? Because otherwise no one in the world would know what happens if you don't do that. Every country in the world was jumping over. We're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do that. And I said so early on. Let me just finish this. So what am I proposing for Britain? A simple solution. And it is the solution. London should abolish all restrictions. Back to before March. No restrictions at all. And we will provide £2, £3 or £4 or £5,000 a week to anyone who feels vulnerable or is sick. We'll give them a house in the country. They can go out of London for a month and a half. And then let's see if there are actually increases in deaths or illness from COVID-19. I tell you this, I believe, and I believe I can show you on the basis of evidence that will not happen. But then we can do in practice, and we can have a vote. And if I'm voted Mayor of London, I will immediately propose a referendum of the population of London to abolish all restrictions, open up the empty buildings, let the people be housed, let the people get work, let the people have entertainment, leisure, let them have holidays, let them be free, and let us control the world in the interest of peace, freedom and plenty in harmony with the ecology. That's what I stand for.
Heidi, you want to infect the tissue?
Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen.
It's still live. Okay. I've been getting fever lately though, that tissue, so be careful.
You give me the virus.